What's up, comic book fans? This is Pete from Comic Books Transformed with my very good friend Brian right over there. Good evening, Brian.
How you doing, Pete?
Brian, are we going to actually talk about a comic book that's been made into a movie today?
Yeah, we are. And we're going to talk about something that's a couple of years old. 10 years old
Yes.
almost. No, not 10.
It's
Almost
pretty
10 years old.
close.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, 2014 is when the original Guardians of the Galaxy came out, and that's what we're discussing today. There isn't any kind of movie or streaming show that's out right now for me and Brian to review, so we're going back to cover the first Guardians, since Guardians Volume 3 is coming out, I guess, next weekend, right?
Next weekend, yeah.
That's crazy soon. Okay, so we're going to cover Guardians, the first one, tonight. Then we're going to cover Guardians Volume 2 next week, and then in 2 weeks from now, we're going to cover Guardians Volume 3. But Brian, that's not all, right? What else are we talking about tonight?
We got a bunch of trailers the last couple of days here and some news out of CinemaCon. So first, we're going to talk about the new Flash trailer and the kind of raving reviews people are. I mean, they actually showed the movie at CinemaCon, which is crazy. And then we're going to talk about something very near and dear to my heart: Transformers.
Yes.
There was a new Rise of the Beast trailer today. I'm excited about it. There was a big old spoiler in there that I wasn't expecting to see.
Yeah.
And maybe I hint to that as if you look behind me. Anyone watching,
Right?
But yeah, I'm excited to talk about that, and also the voice cast announcement for Transformers 1, which is the all animated movie that they're going to put out supposedly next year, but I don't buy that for a second.
No, is it literally called Transformers 1?
Yes, Transformers 1.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. Yeah, it's basically going to be an animated prequel, right?
Yes, it's gonna kind of rehash yet again what we've seen in the comics so many times of, the early meetings of Optimus and Megatron, and they were kind of being brothers in arms, and how it all fell apart.
Okay, cool. All right, some Orion Pax action. We'll talk about that casting when we're talking about Rise of the Beasts, but let's jump into Guardians. So it's the 10th film in the MCU, and I think that's really something to note. If you look at the movies that preceded it, I really feel like there's only 3 movies that I would consider to be like 9s and 10s, basically. Maybe even 8.5s. But those 3 for me, and I want to see if you agree with me, are the first Iron Man, the Avengers, and then the Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier was before this?
Okay, why don't I just go through the lineup real quick? Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, the First Avenger, The Avengers, Iron Man 3, Thor: The Dark World, The Winter Soldier, and then Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, so this is directly. This was the year before that. Okay, yeah. I would agree with that. Yes, although I tend to rank the first Iron Man rather low on my list, which is one of our disagreement points, but it is a good movie. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
we're not reviewing that today.
Yeah, there you go. So for me, I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy is the turning point for the MCU. Like Avengers is this, groundbreaking event where it's like, oh my God, they took all these characters from different movies and they brought them all together, first time ever. But I think that with Guardians, they were showing, hey, we could make something where you don't even really know these characters. Like the diehard comic book fans know them, but you mainstream people don't. And besides that, we're going to kind of make it quirky and fun. And I think that the DNA of the MCU has changed since then. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, although I would definitely argue that, Iron Man was not a household name when it first came out. But I mean, these were really not household names. Like when had I read the Annihilation stuff before this? Probably.
Yeah.
But I mean, like when I actually had Guardians of the Galaxy comics in the 90s.
Yeah.
The older team with, Charlie 27, Martin X, Starhawk, all those people.
Yeah.
So I knew them. So I probably read the newer iteration at your recommendation before this movie.
Yes.
I don't even remember anymore because we're talking, almost 10 years for the movie and, 15, 20 years, for the comics that these characters are from.
Yeah.
This iteration is from, I should say.
Yeah.
Really all these characters are from the 70s.
Right. I'm really, really glad that you started to go down this path because I think that for our viewers, we should just kind of point out that the original Guardians of the Galaxy showed up in 1969. That's the original version, like volume 1 of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And that's all the guys that you just mentioned, Martin X, Charlie 27, Yondu.
Of course, Yondu, how did I forget that?
Yeah, and Vance Astro. These are characters that are very different from the versions that we've seen in the movies too.
And I gotta say too, like I was obsessed with the idea of Vance Astro. There's someone from he eventually was retconned to be from the past or something, but the fact that he had Captain America's shield, I thought that was like the coolest thing.
I agree. I'm, pretty much the same age as you, and we really got into comics because of the Marvel cards too. Those really helped. I remember the Guardians of the Galaxy card with Vance Astro holding up Captain America's shield, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" And so that's really my knowledge of those characters. Jim Valentino was the artist of those 80s and 90s comics with the Guardians, and he went on to make Shadowhawk and start Image with Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee. So even though they're like really obscure, kind of quirky characters in the 80s and 90s, they still had like a big name on that book.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So the version that everyone is familiar with is like the second volume of the Guardians, and that came out. You want to guess the year, Brian?
The Abnett and Lanning version?
Yes.
Oh man. It's after Annihilation Conquest.
That's right.
I want to say 2006. That's
you're so close, man.
2008.
2008. That's right. Yes. So it's funny because I have all these long boxes and I've been going through them, and I'll look at the dates of the comics and be like, okay, when did this come out? And I'm noticing that like 2008 was like a big year for comics and for you and me collecting them, and that's when these guys came out.
Totally, yeah. I had a lot of comics from then. I don't have them anymore, unfortunately, but yeah.
Yeah. And so you just mentioned Annihilation Conquest. That was basically this big galactic Marvel event, and this is just for our viewers who don't know this stuff. And said gatekeeping Pete. It said that you guys don't know it, and I'm like, in case you don't know it, here, I'll just tell you real quick. But basically, Ultron got into outer space and was like conquering different races and stuff in outer space, and a ragtag group of heroes came together to stop him, and that included the original team, which was like Star-Lord, Mantis, Bug, and Rocket and Groot.
Well, that was in Conquest.
That was in Conquest, right?
No, wait. The first one was Ultron, and the second one was Annihilus?
No. Annihilation, the first one is with Annihilus. They're not in that. The second one is Conquest, and that's with Ultron.
That's Ultron and the Phalanx as well.
Right. Like Ultron and the Phalanx together. Yeah. So these two awesome writers, Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning, worked together, and they basically came up with this new version of the Guardians, and that's the version that James Gunn took and ran with.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah. So one last thing, Brian, before we kind of talk about the movie itself, is that they were writing a script for it as far back as 2009. And there was a different writer on it. It was a woman, and her name
Nicole
was
Perlman.
Yeah, Nicole Perlman. Yeah,
I was reading that, and it was apparently it was a lot different. It actually contained the actual war comic origin of Star-Lord with Jason of Spartax as his dad, which kind of lifted and changed around in the second movie.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: which version do you like better? Do you like the comic origin of Star-Lord, or do you like the movie origin of Star-Lord?
Oh man, I'm gonna say the movie, but it's definitely swayed by Kurt Russell.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, and we could talk more about that because you don't really know about his origin in this movie. It's a mystery still in the first movie. But yeah, Nicole Perlman. One thing that I think is like really crucial about her draft that they talk about is that her draft did not have the Walkman, and I feel like that Walkman makes the whole movie.
Yeah, it absolutely frames the movie completely, and I think that's what made it so relatable to people. I think, the kind of misfit outcasts and the inclusion of music, which I always laugh at because I feel like this movie was a blueprint for DC's first take at the Suicide Squad, where they tried to like force all that rock music in it, and then rock music and all that in it.
Yeah.
The rock music. I sound like I'm fucking 40, and I am 40. I sound like I'm 60. And I don't listen to that screaming crap, which I do. So yeah, and I think it's funny that's what makes this movie work so much better. I think, and really it was just horrible in the Suicide Squad.
Oh my God. Yeah. The Suicide Squad obviously was influenced by it. And yeah, it just bombed poorly. They picked the most obvious lame songs. But James Gunn, what he did was he actually went and he looked at the Billboard rankings for songs from the 70s. And there were songs that he, of course, knew and recognized. But then there were songs that he kind of had heard of. But he was like, oh, whoa, this song would really work. And he had like lists of like hundreds of songs he could include. And I think the very first one that was locked in was Moon Age Daydream by David Bowie, who I'm a huge Bowie fan. But I was going to ask you, do you remember the experience of seeing this movie in the theaters for the first time?
I mean, I definitely did see it in the theaters, or remember it. Yeah, I do, yes.
So did you kind of have like any kind of reaction once they first started playing, Come and Get Your Love?
I mean, honestly, I didn't. I don't have as much of a relationship with music from the 70s as I probably should.
Yeah.
That is a good song, and I do think that opening scene with Star-Lord on whatever planet that is
Morag.
Morag, yes, that's right. Is absolutely iconic. I definitely did not realize it at the time, but like thinking back, like I rewatched this movie 2 days ago. I don't know if you rewatched it or not.
I watched it yesterday.
It really is an iconic scene, to be perfectly honest, and one of the best introductions in the MCU, I think.
1,000% agree. And that's the whole thing. The trailers for this movie got everyone hyped just because they were so much fun, right? And they had 70s music too. I think they had Hooked on a Feeling was the song they played in that one. And that has the thing where they show the Guardians like when they're like in the police lineup and you get to meet each character. So much fun, and I think it got the audiences excited. And then okay, first off, I didn't see your finger going up. I just saw your hand going like this. And I was
God.
Yeah. I was like, wait, is he petting a dog?
We're not talking about the Transformers movie yet.
Oh my goodness, Jesus. Oh, that one's for Danny, by the way. Danny, I don't know if he's the person that's watching right now, but Danny wrote this. He wrote, Guardians 2 moves up and down my list a lot. Could be top 5, could be bottom 10. Damn. Okay.
We're going to go at Guardians 2 next week, but it's always been a favorite of mine. It's always been a standout to me, and I've always liked 2 better than 1. And I think most people don't.
Right. I feel the exact same way. Spoilers for next week. Guardians 2 sometimes is the number 1 movie on my MCU ranking. So we'll get to that next week, though. Let's get back to Volume 1. So when that song comes on and Star-Lord's dancing around, that was when I knew. I was like, oh, we're in it. This is going to be good. The hype of the trailer it's valid. Like, this movie's going to deliver. And
this was like, to me, like the height of Chris Pratt. Like, he's kind of fallen on hard times in the sense of the public eye. People were kind of ragging on him for being Mario, which he was fine.
Yeah, I thought he was good.
But like, this is when everyone loved him because he was still, Andy from Parks and Rec. And then it's like, holy shit! Like, he got ripped in what was it, Zero Dark 30?
Yeah.
Whatever. Like, yeah. People were still shocked and amazed at that. And this kind of really solidified him as a Chris.
Right. Yeah. I remember just thinking like he was so great. And I think one of the reasons why we like Star-Lord, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but Star-Lord's basically supposed to be around our age. In 1988, that's when he gets abducted. I'm assuming that he's like 9 or 10. What would you think there?
Yeah, I would say about that, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe he's like 2 or 3 years older than us, but like he's around the same age. All the references he makes are references that we would make, and he kind of acts like me a little bit. I feel like, oh, I can relate. And it kind of helps that his name is Peter too, right?
Yes.
But one other thing that was interesting though is that the guy that plays his grandfather is a James Gunn guy. He's like a guy that James Gunn uses a lot, and he's in that movie Slither. He's so funny. I wish I knew his fucking name. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I do know who you're talking about, but I don't know his name either.
Yeah. He's always just like a small part in some of these James Gunn movies, but I just love that guy. And when I saw him in the beginning, I got real excited too. So let's talk about James Gunn for a second. James Gunn, I read too that Rocket is based on him. Did you read that?
I know that he took a great liking to Rocket. I don't know if I read he was based on him, if that was like his own personal voice insert in the movie or not, but
yeah,
I knew that he was fascinated by Rocket, and that was kind of one of the reasons why he decided to make the movie.
Yeah. And what I liked of his interpretation was he didn't want Rocket to be treated like a cartoon character that was in the movie. He wanted him to be treated like a weapon, essentially, that was like a creature that was taken apart and put back together multiple times to be like this killing machine. And Bradley Cooper had 2 cents to say about Rocket too. He said that Rocket is like Joe Pesci and Goodfellas.
Yeah, I can see that.
he's pretty volatile, right? Yeah. So while we're talking about Star-Lord and Rocket, can you tell me who's your favorite of the Guardians?
In the movie, I was kind of floored by Drax, honestly.
Yeah,
Drax was a bit different than I remember from the comics. It was kind of like more childlike.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And I don't know, just the most of his jokes landed for me very well. You know, when he just doesn't understand sarcasm and all that. I think when I first came out of it, and I still to this day think I would pick him as my favorite in the movie so far.
Yeah, I think that it was a bit of a revelation for people in 2014 that Dave Bautista was so funny and such a good actor.
Right? I mean, I honestly I didn't know much about him beforehand. I definitely watched wrestling in my youth, but I had definitely fallen out of it by then. So I knew he was a wrestler, but I had no frame of reference otherwise. But I laughed at everything he said, basically.
It's funny, right? Because when they were talking about the casting for Guardians of the Galaxy, the first person they started to, fantasy book or whatever for Drax was Jason Momoa.
Yes, I heard that. There was another big name they ran over for him too, but I don't remember who.
It's just so funny while you're kind of thinking about that name or looking it up. I remember them mentioning Jason Momoa, and I was like, yes, that's perfect. Yes, use him. And then when they cast Dave Bautista, I said, oh, man, they picked that wrestling guy. That's going to be so lame. And then he just ended up being, like, perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's perfect in that. Go ahead.
It's kind of funny how often that happens lately. Like, I think, we had some poor frames of reference from the 90s with Hulk Hogan trying to be in movies.
Yeah.
And Roddy Piper, which although I do love They Live So Much, is one of my all-time favorites.
Right.
But Batista, The Rock, John Cena, way better than you'd think a wrestler would be,
Oh, I know. I love
really,
John Cena too.
A huge part of the job is acting. It shouldn't really be a surprise, but honestly, all three of those people have blown me away in ways I would never expect.
Yeah, I completely agree, hands down. Yeah, I mean, it even makes you kind of want to watch. Wait, no, I'm thinking of Jason Momoa. Never mind. But what I was gonna say though was that one of the things that made Drax different in the movie too is they made him gray as opposed to green like in the comics, and that was just to kind of distinguish him from the Hulk. But
I also thought it'd be too many green people because Gamora as well.
Gamora. Okay, so let's talk about Gamora too for a second.
The person I was thinking of about Drax though was Isaiah Mustafa, who didn't blow up as much as people thought he might have. But you might remember him as the Old Spice guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I think that might have worked kind of a little bit.
I agree.
I don't think I would have enjoyed Momoa here as much at all, but I'm still really holding out that Momoa comes back as Lobo.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So they had another actress for Gamora too. I can't remember which actress they were.
Amanda Seyfried. and she got the part, but she turned it down.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, she turned it down because she didn't want to sit through all the makeup, which I
Totally
don't blame
understand.
her. And
Yeah.
but you know what? I think we got the better end of the deal here. I think Zoe Saldana works a lot better than she would have. So I'm kind of happy about that change as well.
Right. Zoe Saldana, it's interesting because she's such a genre actress, right? You know, she's in Avatar, she's in this. I think she's in at least one other sort of comic book sci-fi thing too. And I remember kind of being like, oh yeah, she'll be good. But their specific interpretations, you know, like Bradley Cooper's version of Rocket and Dave Bautista's Drax and Zoe Saldana's Gamora, they essentially replaced what those characters were in the comics.
Yes.
And of course, Chris Pratt's Star-Lord is that he's Star-Lord in the comics was very different before the movie, and then he became the Chris Pratt Star-Lord.
Yeah, and essentially, I would say Rocket and Groot haven't changed too much from the movie. I think they were pretty much spot on.
Yeah.
But those other three characters definitely changed quite a bit because of this movie.
Yeah, yeah. So the differences don't end there, though. I don't really know that much about Nebula, like pre-Guardians. So my exposure to Nebula in the comics, she's in Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah, she's the actual villain of Infinity Gauntlet.
Right. But that's pretty much all I know of her. And then, like in the comics, she's basically like the Karen Gillan version too.
Yes, now she definitely is. I messaged you the other day about the recent reboot of the Guardians comic, the new #1 issue, and she even looks exactly like the movie version now. So
yeah, watching the Guardians movie, the first one, you kind of like forget how nasty she was in this first one.
Yeah, no, it's a almost complete 180. From this movie to how she is now. I mean, she's become one of my favorites, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I think that one thing to point out is that there's only been 2 Guardians movies. We, of course, had the Christmas special, but I feel like a lot of Guardians character work happens in like the big event movies.
Yeah, and especially with Rocket and Nebula because they survived the blip.
Yeah.
So you get a lot more time with them, and I think that's where I started to really start liking Nebula a lot more.
Yeah.
And liking her arc in these movies.
Yeah, she has a true arc in Endgame.
Yeah.
So, we have Nebula, and now here's where things start to get a little weird. Because then you have Ronan the Accuser, and you have the Kree that are introduced in this movie, and you have the Nova Corps that's introduced in this movie. It's the Nova Empire. And the idea is that the Kree and the Nova Empire are fighting each other. Or they have been. There's been like these peace accords. And I feel like stuff that's happened in the movies since then kind of contradicts some of the stuff in this movie. And then it's very different from the way it is in the comics.
Yeah, when I think of Cosmic Marvel, and I'm gonna just flat out say this, that with the exception of the New Gods, I actually prefer Cosmic Marvel for just about everything.
Shit, yeah.
But I'll take the New Gods over the Eternals any day.
Yes.
And when I expect Cosmic Marvel, I think of Kree versus Skrull, and I think of the Nova Corps, essentially kind of like Green Lanterns, but space cops essentially.
Right.
But I don't know why they didn't use Skrulls at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of baffling to me, honestly. I guess they needed to. Oh, go ahead.
Wasn't it that Fox still had the rights to specific Fantastic Four characters?
Right. I forgot about that. It's like it feels like ancient history, even though we haven't gotten some of those movies yet. But
right.
Yeah, you're right. They were limited. That's why we also had the Chitauri in Avengers rather than something else. Because a lot of these characters are so heavily tied to Fantastic Four.
Right.
Wow. I can't believe I forgot that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just thinking about that, like I imagine they could have made this movie without those restrictions. I mean, watching this movie, one of the things that I thought about the most was just like, wow, like how great would this be if this was more standalone, and they used this as a kind of a launching point for just cosmic Marvel, and it didn't really have much of a time with the Avengers, sort of. And we got Kree and Skrulls and all the huge cosmic characters and all that, and instead of trying to shoehorn it in with Thanos and the Infinity Saga, of course Drax and Gamora are kind of tied to that pretty heavily, the Infinity Gauntlet, but those other characters weren't really.
No. Yeah. And in the comics, they have been kind of more connected since then, too, like since they've changed everything.
What? And to me, the biggest omission in all this too is Nova, Richard Rider Nova. Like that, I'm still bummed that we don't have that.
Yeah,
he was that was my entry point and my focal point of that cosmic era of Marvel we were talking about earlier in the early mid 2000s.
Yeah, the Annihilation stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Nova. I was gonna say that when they start to deviate, it gets kind of weird because Ronan the Accuser is like a Kree enforcer, and he's not really a bad guy. But in this movie, he's truly a bad guy. And then he's almost like part of some kind of religious zealot group in this movie. He has these followers, but they're not like Kree warriors. I think at one point someone actually says they're from Skaro or Sakaar, right? That's that planet that's in Planet Hulk, right? And so he has these weird kind of creatures that serve him. They show more like in the battle at the very end. Yeah. But I was like, oh, where are they from? And then like Jamon Hansu, it plays Korath, who is like a Kree warrior too, and he's like his underling. But I feel like Ronan is the biggest deviation from the comics.
Yeah, and arguably Ronan as a villain was kind of subpar, honestly.
Yeah, totally.
The draw of this movie is the kind of the outcasts coming together and banding together to kind of save the galaxy, essentially. And while I'm not saying that Ronan wasn't a threat, but I guess they just didn't give him enough to do.
No.
So I don't know. It was a little muddled, and this was something that needed some work, I think.
Yeah. Well, in the background we have Thanos, and Thanos is mentioned quite a bit in this movie. He has a big part to play in this movie. Oh, that actually reminds me of something I wanted to say based on what you were saying before. That I think that pre-James Gunn being fired and pre-COVID, the idea was that James Gunn was going to develop the cosmic Marvel side for the movies. And then he ended up getting fired by Disney and going over to DC.
And then he came back just to finish out his trilogy.
Right. So I think that he was going to develop stuff, and we would have seen more space stuff, but then he ended up getting fired.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, but Thanos, though, he was kind of bummed that Thanos had to be in his movie because he felt like that belittled Ronan. And I totally forgot about that character from the Avengers, the Other. Did you forget about him too?
Yeah, I did because he obviously dies here, and that was supposed to be like a show of power of Ronan, that he was, Loki was scared of the Other in the Avengers, and this guy's just like, twists his neck around like that. But still, it didn't. I don't think it had the effect that they wanted it to have.
What do you mean?
Well, the effect, they want to show that Ronan is a powerful threat, that he is, more of a threat than even Loki was.
Right.
People liked Loki, but I don't think people saw the Other as something that was worthy, or it wasn't a good use of displaying Ronan's power.
Gotcha.
I think it went over people's heads. I think it went over my head, honestly.
Yeah. I guess because he was like in the Avengers and he seemed like kind of like, oh wow, this is like Thanos' guy. To kill Thanos' guy, I thought that was a big deal. But Thanos just basically smiles at him and says, I'll bathe the Starways in your blood. Did you like Thanos in this movie?
Yeah, I did. I mean, he didn't have much to do in it, but it was a nice. This is the most we've seen of him.
Yeah.
So far. We'd only previously seen him in. We didn't even hear him speak in the Avengers. He's just there.
Yeah.
And this Age of Ultron is after this, right?
Age of Ultron is after this, yes.
And that's his other appearance where he's in the Stinger and he says "I'll do it myself" line or whatever.
I'll do it myself. Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about like moments that we really like from this movie. So first off, do you have any moments that you dislike from this movie?
Most I dislike. Well, the one thing that always holds me back on this movie is that I was sort of dissatisfied with the climax.
Okay.
Just kind of grabbing the Power Stone and then just the little dance off thing. I don't know why I wanted a little bit more. I don't know what I wanted. If it's very possible that what I wanted wouldn't have worked and would have made it worse.
Okay.
Because I'm a stupid person who doesn't know what I want half the time. But something about that was disappointing to me a little bit. I was like, that's how they're going to end this? Like,
Yeah.
But watching it again, I think I'm appreciating it a bit more. But
sure.
Prior to that would have been my call out. Is something I didn't really like.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. I think to me it's like kind of a symbolic ending. It's like, oh, they all come together, they all band together, and that's how they're able to defeat the bad guy. And also that like his mom says, "Take my hand" at the beginning of the movie, and then Gamora says, "Take my hand." So it's like full circle.
Well, it would. I'm not. It's not. That's not the part that bothers me. I guess it's the fact that just Ronan walks out, Star-Lord dances, and then they start doing the thing with the stone.
Yeah.
I wish there was a little bit more in between that.
Sure.
Like maybe some small fight or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it would have been cool if maybe there was some sort of like ground battle with like a couple of other people and Ronan versus them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for me, I always say that like when I can tell a movie is really good is when it's like, oh, here comes this next scene and here comes this next scene. And there's some really like memorable moments with like really great music cues in this movie. I mean, almost every scene is a likable scene. First off, the whole sequence where he goes and he gets the Power Stone in the very beginning, him landing on the planet, him searching the planet, him playing "Come and Get Your Love." It's all beautifully shot. The music syncs up with what he's doing. It's great. There's that Star-Lord "Who" moment. That's awesome. Then he goes to escape, and the girl's on the ship, and he says, "I kind of forgot you were there." It's so fucking good, And then there's just so many great moments. There's, like there's stuff with Groot that I guess I kind of forget about where, he makes a little flower and he gives that girl on nowhere. Then at the very end, he makes that sort of shield for everybody and, he sacrifices himself. I think since we know from the comics that Groot can regenerate, and because we've watched so many movies since then and Groot's in them, it doesn't seem to have that much impact. But watching that scene and just kind of let myself enjoy it, I was like, oh, this is a really good scene.
No, it's a very powerful scene. But and I think in the comics, it's Groot is still the same person or was at the time. In this they actually do say that this is not the same Groot. This is like essentially Groot's son, really.
Right.
Baby Groot is Groot's son. It's not the same Groot.
Right.
And I think that does add to the sacrifice a lot.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes it a lot better. Yeah, and it almost seems like this second Groot is a little bit more keen than the first Groot, right? Because Rocket is pretty mean to him in this movie.
Yeah, he kind of treats him like a big dumb muscle.
Yeah,
kind of guy,
He calls him an idiot like a lot.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. And part of Rocket's art is that he's kind of like an asshole.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really warm up to people, and even the people he has warmed up to, he's still kind of a little rough around the edges with.
Yeah. So another scene that I guess I forgot how much I liked it is when Gamora gets blown up in that little pod, and Star-Lord ejects himself from his pod, and he puts his mask on her face, and he's just kind of standing there like this, and it's just so well shot. Where he's like holding her and he's like freezing up, and then he gets sucked into the what do you call it? Tractor beam.
Ship.
Right. So I mean, just stuff like that. And then also the Ravagers. I forget how much I like Yondu because we haven't had Yondu in a while in the movies.
Yes. Another favorite scene of mine too is actually after that, where they're sitting around talking about they need to come up with a plan because Star-Lord said they had a plan. That's like the Bond's the forming there, and that's a favorite scene of mine in the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's funny because Dungeons and Dragons, the movie that just came out, a lot of people have compared that movie to Guardians, the first Guardians movie, and there's a scene in Dungeons and Dragons that's like that exact scene.
I haven't seen it yet, but I'll have to. I wanted to, but yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. I think you'll like it. It's a lot like this, but it's got its own charm too. I'm just trying to think of what else I really wanted to bring up.
I wanted to say that just the fact that this was also great world building in the sense that when we received Nowhere the first time, it's a giant dead celestial head, and that's the first time we're really is it the first time we've seen it? Celestial?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering if they possibly showed one in a previous Thor briefly or something, but yeah, it just I really like the details of that, and the foreshadowing you got that in terms of Eternals, and yeah.
There's so much world building in this movie because we get the Collector too, and the Collector talks about the Infinity Stones, which like the whole fucking first 3 phases of Marvel are the Infinity Saga, right?
Yep.
And it's all introduced in this movie. I mean, and like we really see Thanos in this movie, so and Gamora and Nebula are Thanos' daughters, right? So much of what people love about Marvel is in this movie.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah.
And it's just made more impressive by the fact that they took unknown characters and made them household names.
Yeah. Cool. Well, do you have anything else you have to say about Guardians Volume 1?
Just that, re-examining my rankings after rewatching this, I definitely have my recency bias problem. But I'm bumping this up to number 9.
Oh, nice. I totally am an asshole, and I didn't rank this, and I didn't change the.
I just wanted to call out that like I previously, I just had that hindsight in my head where just being sort of dissatisfied with the end sequence, with that slight lack in the end sequence, and I kind of got past it, I guess, at this point now. And framing it against other things I've watched, like it really is a fucking fantastic movie.
Well, what do you call it? We're going to cover Volume 2 next week, and I'll go over my rankings of the Marvel movies and if this has changed them next week.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Sounds good.
All right, cool. So then let's go ahead and jump into The Flash. And with The Flash, we saw a second trailer. Does this trailer get you more excited or less excited about this movie?
Yeah, more. Because we see more Batman.
Yes.
And honestly, too, like even when I think of the main comic touch point for this is Flashpoint, and I still think that the Batman side arc was the best part of Flashpoint. The main story is good too, but like the Batman side part was the best.
Yeah.
I'm just still the most exciting thing to me is Michael Keaton back.
Yeah.
I am more excited about it. I keep reading that and granted, this is from some executives, people that may even be part of DC, saying that it is an all-time superhero movie. Like it's that good.
Yeah.
I've been hearing James Gunn say that for a while, and I'm curious. I'm very curious, and I have very high expectations now, I would say, for this movie.
Yeah. I don't know if we went in depth about this, but the director is Andy Muschietti, right? And he did It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2. I think we did mention that, but I'm not sure if we mentioned the screenwriter last time. Do you remember?
No, I don't.
So it's Christina Hodson, and she
wrote Bumblebee.
She wrote Bumblebee, and she wrote Birds of Prey.
Okay.
And I'm a fan of both of those movies, and I know some people aren't, but I could see a person that wrote those 2 movies making a emotionally satisfying, exciting movie for this.
Yeah, totally.
So when I saw those 2 names connected, because It Chapter 2 is pretty rough and it's not good, but It Chapter 1 is very good, and I think Bumblebee does with the Transformers franchise what we want it to do, and also what's the fucking actress that's Hawkeye?
Haley Steinfeld.
Haley Steinfeld, like that character is essentially like an original character, and you really feel for that character by the end of the movie.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Yeah.
So what the fuck is the Dark Flash then?
I have no idea. I that's my biggest fear is that they're gonna make Reverse Flash into Dark Flash, and I don't like that. Just I know that yellow is not a threatening color, and Reverse Flash, I don't know. I could see some like casual moviegoer being like, "That's stupid." Reverse, but Dark Flash it's kind of cliche, I guess. I don't know.
Was it Reverse Flash on the first season of The Flash?
Yeah.
It wasn't like Professor Zoom or...
No, they called him Reverse Flash the entire time. And Eobard Thawne. They didn't ever call him Professor Zoom.
Because he's fucking scary on that first season of The Flash.
Yeah, he is. I think he's a good villain, honestly.
Yeah.
But I don't want... I mean, I guess... if they're saying that one of these two Barrys that you're seeing in this movie turns evil somehow,
yeah,
I guess that's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah,
but I don't like Dark Flash. The name Dark Flash.
Yeah, it's
and if they're doing that and then there'll still be Reverse Flash somewhere down the line, maybe that's okay.
Yeah,
but ultimately, I don't want them to erase Reverse Flash.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you on that. It's weird because in this specific trailer, in the Flash trailer 2, there's a shot where it's Supergirl, Barry, and then there's the other Barry, but at least one of them looks kind of chunky, and I thought it was that Dark Flash costume.
I think that's just the makeshift Batsuit Flash costume. Like, notice the cowl on that shot there. That's a Michael Keaton Batman cowl repurposed.
Oh, okay.
Like, I think that's what that is ultimately. Is that it's a makeshift suit that they slap some red paint on.
Yeah.
To go to whatever battle this is.
Huh.
I don't know if that's going to translate into Dark Flash, or I have no idea what they're going to do with it.
Yeah.
But based on all the prior news and controversy with Ezra Miller, I'm very curious to know what they're going to do here. If because this is the first Flash movie, it's like, and it would feel weird if this was an ending, sort of,
I completely agree. Yeah, it is weird that it's just called The Flash, but yet it has all this weird multiverse stuff with different Batmans. Like there's 2 Batmans in this at least. Yeah. It's bizarre. With that being said, and going back to your point about Flashpoint, I looked at some of the casting, and one of the major parts of Flashpoint is that there's a war between Atlantis and Themyscira. And
yes.
What do you call it? Tamara Morrison, Boba Fett himself, Aquaman's father, is in this movie.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then Gal Gadot is in this movie too, apparently.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that they're just going to bypass any kind of Atlantean, Themysciran war, but they might have like Wonder Woman show up for like a 2-minute cameo, and then Tamara Morrison, you might see him. And he might be like in a video clip or something, but it'll probably be along the lines of that, like he didn't save Arthur's mother.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's
yes.
like, oh, well, we could have had. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely. The threat here is obviously Zod.
Yeah. And also, you might like this too. Apparently, Fiora's in it too.
Yes, I heard that Fiora is in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Fiora in Man of Steel. I wish there was like 3 other movies with Fiora in it.
Totally.
Yeah.
She's in that.
Wait, what's that?
Watch this show Dark on Netflix. She's the actress.
Oh, you always raved about that show. Yeah.
Oh,
I'll have to check that out. What do you call it? I was going to say something else about this. Okay, here's one of the things I kind of am worried about. There's all these like kind of references to the Michael Keaton Batman movies, and I feel like it's a little too much. Like there's that one part where he says, "You want to get nuts?" And he pauses like really fucking long. Let's get nuts.
I was all on board when he said I'm Batman, and I think it's we need to see one line like that, one catchphrase, something like that.
Right.
But seeing 2 in such a short amount of footage we've seen, seems like too much. I'm hoping that in the grand scheme of things, that's it. That's the only two callback one-liners.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you think that at one point he's going to punch a Kryptonian, put a bomb in his pants, and then knock him down a drain?
Maybe. Who knows?
Okay, cool. Yeah, because that's Batman Returns with that strongman. But it's weird. Like when he says his lines, he's always like looking right at the camera, and there's always like a long pause too, right? Where he's like, "That's right."
It's just missing a little wink,
Right. They have to like maybe cut like a second out of that or something because he's like, "That's right, I'm Batman." It's like it's too much. It's too much. Well, do you have anything you want to say about any more about this?
I'm excited for the movie, and I'm terrified of the release slate of June in general because it's Spider-Verse, it's Flash, and then it's the next movie we're talking about Transformers.
Oh my God, we're going to be busy then.
Yeah.
So let's get right to that spoiler then for the 7th Transformers film, Transformers: Rise of the Beast. Right over there, you got him. You got
spoiler, Unicron. Holy crap! They show Unicron in the trailer.
Yes. So what the fuck is going to happen in this movie?
I have no idea. We haven't really seen much. We just know that the Maximals were there and that something was coming, and we all assumed it was Unicron because Scourge. Scourge is in the original cartoon and the cartoon movie is the Herald of Unicron.
Right.
And we weren't really sure. Unicron is like the ultimate big bad, essentially.
Yeah.
In Transformers. I'm even though I kind of knew and had heard rumors about it, I was still surprised to see it here.
Yeah.
They've tried to incorporate Unicron in other series.
Yeah.
Since the original movie.
Right.
One of the big plot points that they tried to do is they tried to say that the Earth, Unicron was the Earth.
Right.
And dear God, I hope they don't do that because I hate that.
I know you're not a fan of that, and I'm not really a fan of that either. What I would say, though, is that I think these movies are supposed to connect to the Bay movies, right?
Oh, man, that's the huge discourse in the Transformers fandom. People, the people, I even got into arguments with people over this because I'm like, all I said was like, it could kind of connect still. Like, I'm not saying it is, but it could, sort of. Yeah. I know there's a ton of contradictions because, there are, but look at X-Men. There's 1,000 contradictions in that. Just like that. So, I ultimately don't care.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want it to connect. I don't care if it does or it doesn't.
Right.
But there are people out there that just like, they look down upon you for even saying that it could be related to it. And I don't understand why.
Yeah. I think that people just really dislike those Bay movies. It seems like there's two camps. There's like kind of the Transformers fans like us that like love the comics and the cartoons and stuff. Then these movies made so much money, and I remember taking people to go see them, and they weren't like Transformers fans, but they just liked the whole spectacle, kind of like the equivalent of like the Fast and the Furious. And I think that they kind of want to eliminate that feeling from the series, I would say that to me, when I watch this, it looks like the Maximals might literally be the Maximals from the future, like they are in the Beast Wars cartoon, and they've just been on Earth for a long time. Because Ron Perlman's Optimus Primal says, for hundreds of years we've hidden on Earth, and I think that probably what happens is that Unicron shows up in the future of the Michael Bay Transformers timeline. And in this movie, in this trailer, there looks like there's definitely a beam going up into the sky at one point in the very beginning of the trailer. And, it's such a cliche thing. But I know that the characters in the movie, like there's archaeologists in the movie. And I think that someone activates the signal that makes Unicron come to Earth early. That's my theory.
That could be. Yeah. So one of the rumors I heard is that the Maximals are actually just from a different planet. I don't know if they're going to play with time travel.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. There is some precedent with that. With the Unicron trilogy cartoons.
Right.
different planets, like this the Speedy Planet and the Giant Planet and the Beast Planet.
Right.
I'm okay with that. But because time travel can be kind of messy, and this continuity is already so messy as it is.
Agreed.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious if Unicron is actually present in the climax here, or if he's just in a flashback sequence, or
Yes.
setting Scourge on a mission or something like that. Because we know from the original animated movie that Unicron sends Galvatron out to destroy the one thing he fears.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that could also be a plot point, that maybe he's sending Scourge to go find something the only thing that can hurt him or stop him.
The Matrix.
That somehow happens to be on Earth for whatever reason.
I think you're right, but I do think that, like, okay, yeah. So the very first scene in this movie is probably like the very first scene in the 1986 movie, where it's going to be Unicron. He's going to eat a planet, but it's going to be some random planet.
I hope so.
Yeah. Because they show him it's around a planet that looks kind of like Earth, but it has rings around it. Like,
got a ring around it, yeah.
Right. So I think that's just going to be like the prologue, right? And that he will send Scourge, but it'll be like some other part in space, and he'll send him to Earth.
Yeah, because there is a scene where you see Scourge standing on a platform in space, and you see kind of Unicron's eyes, which is very reminiscent of Unicron talking to Galvatron in the 86 movie, although you didn't really see a face at that point.
Right, yeah. And so, that's kind of the big revelation for this trailer. Otherwise, the action and stuff that we see is kind of reminiscent of what we saw in the first trailer. We see a little bit more with the main character played by Anthony Ramos. His name's Noah Diaz in this movie. And we see more of Dominique Fishback. Her character is Elena Wallace. And I think that she's connected to the archaeologist. And my bet is that they do find something that makes Unicron's forces go to Earth. That's my thing.
Yeah, and I think so. I'm so mixed on this movie and how to feel about it. On one hand, yeah. I'm fearful that there's a lot of hallmarks of the Bay movies at present here.
Yeah.
At the other hand, though, there doesn't seem to be much human activity. Like, we don't, even in this trailer, we don't see very much of Noah, or what was it, Elena?
Elena, yeah.
Elena. We don't see very much of them, honestly, and we don't see anybody else. Like, there's no other human cast that they've announced in any way,
Yeah, they did show one other guy like in a car, kind of cheering, and I believe that he is played by Toby Nwigwe. I don't know, Nwigwe, and he's playing a character named Reek, which I thought was kind of funny for his name, because that's like from Game of Thrones,
I did hear about that, yes.
And so he's actually based on a best friend of the director. I should have wrote down the
Stephen Cable Jr.
Yes, yeah, and the friend died in 2021, so he's kind of based on that character.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Or that character's based on him. There we go.
Yeah,
man. But overall, you're excited about this movie after watching the show?
I think just the fact that we're seeing this crazy battle at the end where there's like tons of Scorponaut clones and all this crap. There's not a human in sight. There's not a human in sight, and that's kind of what I want. That's what I wanted from these movies. I want less humans and stuff. I don't want a human insert. I want to see robots as the characters, and I think I don't think we're going to get too much out of most of the characters. Maybe we'll get I believe Prime is supposed to have more of a character going
right
into this movie, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I am kind of excited about it. It would be good if it was more character driven, like the Bumblebee movie, and even though it has a lot of spectacle and a lot of like world building aspects to it, it still is like fun, and there's that real sense of danger that you have in the Bumblebee movie for the main characters. Like, if we have that, I'm good.
Yeah, but I want that too, but I want that for the robots.
Right. Yeah, and we'll see. There is one part where like Bumblebee looks like he gets like skewered by Scourge on a blade. Did you see that?
That was the previous trailer. Yeah. And I'm still very curious to see. And to me, this is going to be the ultimate mark of this is a prequel or not. Is that you don't really see Bumblebee in that big battle scene at the end. I don't think.
Oh yeah. So does he get killed? Yeah. Good call. Yeah. I guess we'll see. When does that come out? In the end of June?
It's June 7th. Something. It's early June. It's like it's no joke. It's Spider-Verse, Flash, then this movie.
Nice.
Like, one after another.
So Brian and I kind of don't have much to cover right now, but in June we're going to have all those 3 movies to cover. We'll be back next week to cover Guardians Volume 2. We are always ready to take suggestions from you guys on what else we should be talking about on this channel. But if you liked our Guardians review, make sure you subscribe. And I guess Brian and I will see you guys next week. Nice.